you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, smash that like button, share this video. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments down below. It really does help the channel grow, and it gives me an insight into what you guys are thinking about these stories. Also, go to www.tcbshow.net. Check out all the merchandise that we have available on that website. I don't want to waste any more of your time, so let's just get into this. A judge orders U.S. to reinstate Trump-era Remain in Mexico asylum policy. This is a great plan. Let me tell you why. When Trump had our Stay in Mexico order in place, it really helped control a lot of what was going on. It gave the Border Patrol agents the ability to maintain the border, and it slowed it down to almost a trickle on what the illegal immigrants were doing coming into the United States. A federal judge in Texas directed the Biden administration on Friday to reinstate the Trump-era policy of requiring asylum seekers to wait in Mexico for the U.S. court hearing, saying the program was illegally terminated. U.S. District Court Judge Matthew Kacsmaryk was appointed to the bench by former President Trump, ordered federal officials to revive the so-called Remain in Mexico program until it's lawfully rescinded and the government has the detention capacity to hold all asylum and migrants subject to mandatory detention. This is what I like when I read this story. The government has the detention capacity to hold all asylum seekers and migrants subject to mandatory detention. That's what's going on right now. There's a lot of people that are living in total horrendous conditions right now because they are staying in these facilities where they're not manageable. And that's something anybody could applaud when it comes to this order. At least if they're staying in Mexico, they have to stay there. They got shelter. They got other things in place that were over there. The Mexican border towns were able to help with that. They weren't having to stay in these horrendous living conditions, stacked one right on top of another. This is a lot better living conditions if they stayed in Mexico. The judge delayed the effect of his nationwide ruling by 7 days to give the Biden administration time to file an appeal. In his 53-page opinion, the judge said in the memo Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas issued in June to formally end the Remain in Mexico policy violated the administrative law. The judge found that Mayorkas failed to consider the program's benefits, which he said included the deterrence effect that the policy had on migrants who don't qualify for U.S. refuge. Yes. You can't say that it wasn't working. People cannot say it wasn't working. Now Texas is starting to get filled with undocumented immigrants all over again. Friday's ruling is a victory for Texas and Missouri, which filed a lawsuit against the suspension of the Remain in Mexico rule, formerly known as the Migrant Protection Protocols. The judge rulings found that Texas and Missouri are being harmed by the policy's reversal because migrants released into the U.S. will use health care services, apply for driver's license, and their children will attend U.S. schools. It puts a strong effect on the Americans, the American taxpayer who has to foot that bill. It's the American taxpayer that has to pay for the Medicaid program and pay for the children that attend these schools for the free school lunch program that you know that they're going to apply for and get. Plus, on top of that, the SNAP benefits that these undocumented immigrants will get right off the bat if they can't find a job right away. So this puts a further burden onto the American taxpayer, which I think is asinine to even consider having to have the Texas and Missouri taxpayers foot the bill to cover these undocumented immigrants that are flooding into their city. The Department of Homeland Security referred questions on Friday's order to the Justice Department, which declined to comment. Created in late 2018, the Remain in Mexico program was a centerpiece of the Trump administration's efforts in 2019 to deter migration to the U.S. southern border. Approximately 70,000 non-Mexican asylum applicants were enrolled in the program and returned to Mexico, where many found themselves living in squalid tent camps and dangerous border towns. But here's the thing: this is CBS. CBS knows damn well that the taxpayers are going to have to foot this bill. And living in a tent situation is a lot better than having to stay in a detention camp where you're stuck with living on top of one another and in horrible conditions. The bathrooms in those areas are terrible. I mean, if the CDC doesn't see that the bathrooms and the restrooms, the porta-johns in that area is disgusting, I don't know what else can be. If you're going in there taking a dump inside these porta-johns that are disgusting and filled to the brim, what the hell do you want people to do? The practice was scaled back during the coronavirus pandemic when the U.S. border officials were granted emergency powers by the CDC and prevention to expel unauthorized migrants without allowing them to request asylum. The Biden administration has continued to use the Trump-era public health order known as Title 42 to expel migrant adults and families with children, but it suspended the Remain in Mexico program on the day of the president's inauguration. Joe Biden dropped the ball here, and this is just the first video that I'm going to release today. Joe Biden dropped the ball here. And this is not the only time he's dropped it during his, not even a year into office. I mean, it seems like that he didn't even care about these migrants that were coming across the border. It's horrible. But yet, they continue to allow them to live in this filth, and they would rather them than do that than live in a tent camp across the river. I would rather live in a tent camp across the river.
Lady, what do you want to do with your life?
I want to live in a van down by the river.
Well, you'll have plenty of time to live in a van down by the river when you're living in a van down by the river.
Instead of living in these horrible detention camps where the bathrooms are disgusting. And this is Biden's fault. Since then, the Biden administration has allowed 13,000 asylum seekers previously subjected to remain in Mexico to enter the U.S. and continue their court proceedings with family or sponsors according to government data. That's not including the people that are jumping the border, coming here illegally on rafts, sneaking across, cutting through the fence, where Joe Biden allowed them to not finish the job. It's crazy. In June, Mayorkas signed the formal termination of the MPP rule, saying any benefits the program may have offered now far outweighed by the challenges, risks, and costs that it presents. Explain to me this. How is having somebody stay in a country across from us helping cutting costs? I could see them staying there cutting costs, but them staying here and living in this filth that we have to pay for, the food that we have to pay for, that's not helping the costs. I mean, what is the risk of having them stay in Mexico? You would rather them come across the border, vote Democrat, and kick in and affect the cost of the states that they're sitting, the state burden that puts on the state. That is what is gross. The fact that you outweigh this over what the taxpayers have to front up the cost of food for the SNAP benefits, the food for the free lunch program, the probably the Section 8 that they're gonna get. You're not even thinking about any of that. Among other reasons, Mayorkas cited concerns of the lack of stable access to housing, income, and safety force asylum seekers stranded in Mexico to abandon potentially meritorious protection claims. How? If they're not from Mexico and they're fleeing these other the South American countries or Central American countries, they're already out of harm's way. You can't tell me that they're still in harm's way if they're already outside of the country where they have these problems. If they're from Central America, there's no way that they should be afraid for their lives in Mexico, unless they're doing something shady in Mexico. And then at that point, why would we allow them here in the United States if they're going to be shady here? Nobody's thinking about these extra steps that we're taking to bring them into the United States. Mayorkas said he considered the other policies to manage future migration flows in the light of the MPP termination, but the federal judge said Mayorkas failed to acknowledge warnings that the program's end could fuel more migration, arguing the reversal has contributed to the current border surge. That is the Biden administration's problem. And yet nobody even acknowledges it anymore. The fact that the border is crumbling, they don't care. At least Trump had a plan to stop illegal immigration. You didn't see them coming. They tried to come here, but they were stopped at the border. They said, nope, you go back. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. There was not a border crisis when Trump was in office. In July, U.S. agents along the Mexican border made over 212,000 migrant apprehensions, a 21-year monthly high. The Biden administration has attributed the sharp increase in migration to poverty, violence, natural disasters, and pandemic-induced economic recessions in migrants' home countries. Why is that our problem? We have our own poverty. We have our own violence. We have our own natural disasters that affect us here in the United States, and we can't flee to another country. We have to stick it out and deal with it here. What about our homeless veterans that are stuck on the streets, that aren't getting the proper medications because they can't foot the bill? Yeah, you continue to find reasons to allow illegal immigration here in the United States, but you don't once consider the fact that we have our own problems here. We have our own poverty. We have our own violence. We have our own natural disasters. We have our own pandemic-induced economic recession. We're still in. We're paying over almost $4 a gallon in gas here in the United States. That's a freaking problem. We are in our own recession. People are not able to, aren't taking jobs. Our unemployment runs out in the next couple of days, but you're not there in the next month or so, and you're not even thinking about that. That's going to cause a mass hysteria of people looking for jobs, and people are going to be fighting over. It's going to cause we haven't even thought about that far ahead, have we, Joe? On Thursday, Mayorkas said another reason could be the end of the cruel policies that past administration and the restoration of the rule of laws that this country and Congress has passed. No administration has ever followed the rules of law that this country has already passed. You can't say that. Our country has not once followed the rule of law. We've allowed it to continue to roll on and continue to allow illegal immigration to just surpass. The only president that's ever followed the rule of law and tried to combat this issue was Donald J. Trump. I don't know if you guys can hate me or love me, but that is the absolute truth. I'm more concerned about the kids that we're finding dead in the desert from the coyotes that just abandoned them there. That's who I'm worried about. I'm worried about the single mother coming across the border illegally and found dead from dehydration, found dead from sunburn, found dead. A lot of the times, they've been dead so long that our Border Patrol only finds skeletal remains. If you clearly cared about these kids that these people sit there and say they do, then why aren't you guys trying to find a reason for them to stay and we can find a solution for them in their own country so they're not risking their lives coming across because they're dying? What about all the women and children that are sexually assaulted while on their journey here to the United States? And yes, it's young girls too. Everybody wants to care, but nobody thinks about the consequences of allowing this illegal migration into the United States costs. These people are paying $8,000 to allow a coyote to bring them across the border, but they're saying they're broke and they're poor and they're struggling in their own country, but they have $8,000 American dollars. That's enough to survive for a while down in Mexico or any of these southern border countries. I don't know about you guys, but this is a huge problem that I find and I see every single day when I read these stories that nobody ever talks about. Thank you again for choosing the TCB show. I am the Conservative Bear. If you're new to this channel and I earned your trust on this video, smash that like button, share this video. Let me know your thoughts on this. I would love to hear them in the comments down below. Thank you again. I hope you guys have a good day. God bless. And as always, deuces.